I had a baby that was waking up at 5 a.m. no matter what time I got home. And by the end of September of 2009, I was just completely burnt out. I had an 11-month-old baby. My hours were so crazy. I had worked for 30 days on a project. I lived an hour away. I had this horrible drive. And by the time I was just completely done. I thought I was done being a lawyer. I actually thought I hated the law.
Welcome back, everybody, to the From Crisis to Justice podcast. I'm your host, Parag Amin. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Lisa Odom. She's a former big law lawyer who started her own law firm to become the founder and managing shareholder of Odom Law Group, a professional legal corporation based in Stevenson Ranch, California. She's been awarded the 40 Under 40 Award in her community of Santa Clarita, as well as the prestigious Trusted Advisor Attorney of the Year Award from the San Fernando Valley Business Journal. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to become a lawyer?
Absolutely. That's actually a very easy question. My mom is a lawyer, and she went back to law school. So she went to law school when I was an infant, but she only went for 1 year, and then she ended up deciding she wanted to be a mom and not really do that. So when I was 8 years old, she went back to law school, started over, and she graduated law school when I was 11. And I remember being at her law school graduation and thinking, I'm going to do this one day too. I was so proud of her and just enjoyed watching her be successful and a strong, smart woman. And so at about 11 to 12, I decided I was going to be a lawyer, and pretty much never derailed from that. I followed that path all the way through college and then law school. So
that's amazing. What did your mom think about your decision to become a lawyer?
Oh, she was thrilled. She was thrilled, and we ultimately ended up in business together. But during the course of law school, I think probably many of us had these feelings of, why am I here? Like, there was times when I would have so much studying to do and so much reading to do, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember my mom and I had this like habit of meeting on Mondays during law school and having dinner together so we could like regroup. And she would literally convince me to stay the course, because I was like, I've never had to study this much. I don't want to do this anymore. This is crazy. But I think I had jitters because I'd always been such a great student and I didn't know what to expect in law school. And you don't have like regular homework assignments or anything that is graded in law school to kind of let you know how you were doing. And so she kind of like had to encourage me. And I'm so glad she did, because it was the best decision I ever made. But man, did we have probably 6 or 7 dinners where I was like, I'm done. I'm quitting today. Like, this is stupid, and I'm going to go get a different job. So she's thrilled that I'm here, and she still works with me to this day, although she's trying to retire. We keep pulling her back.
Wow, that's incredible. So yeah, absolutely. Law school is a bit of a hard reality check when you're used to doing extremely well. And sometimes it comes relatively easy, not always, but sometimes academics, especially for a lot of lawyers, has come easily. And then later when they get into law school, it's graded on a curve. There's one exam most of the time, and that determines your whole semester for your grade.
It was shocking. Like, I was an excellent undergrad student and I did not work that hard. I'm sorry to say, but when I went to law school, I was like, this is a whole different animal. And you never knew when the teacher was going to call on you either, at least at my school. And so if you weren't prepared, you would like look like an idiot in front of your peers. So it was terrifying to me. I felt like I was in a constant state of terror my first year, constant. So.
Yeah. And so do you have any tips or advice for listeners who are listening to this and are feeling like something they're working on is too hard, and they feel like quitting, they feel like they're not good enough, they feel insecure about it? Do you have any tips for them?
I think you have to learn how to drown out the noise. Like, you have to find a way to like decompress and remind yourself. It reminds me of like the old Stuart Smalley, like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. But you kind of have to do that. You have to like remember, you're here for a reason. Stay the course. You're gonna do fine. You just have to power through. everyone in your, especially as a first year, everyone is in your same boat. Nobody knows what they're doing. This is all part of what we learn in law school. You're learning how to be a lawyer, and you're not supposed to know your first year. You're supposed to learn how to do it. And that first year is so fundamental in getting there. And if you can power through and believe in yourself and study, I think it's really a mistake not to study, but I think that some of lawyers that often have big egos. And so because we were good students, we assume that we're going to be great at it because we were so good, but you really are completely learning how to think in a different way that is so different than how a non-lawyer thinks, that you got to trust the process a little bit. I think you got to like take a step back, keep reading, keep studying, keep paying attention to what the professors are telling you. The professors are giving you the roadmap to what they care about on exams and whatnot, and they're teaching you how to issue spot. That's what this whole thing is for. So stay the course, believe in yourself, but also try to learn how to drown out that negative, like imposter syndrome type chatter that we all have, especially high performers. I mean, I don't know if I can speak for you, but for me, to this day, I have imposter syndrome. I wake up sometimes and I'm like, I'm going to mess this up, or what if the client fires me, or I was late getting to this. And it's like, stop, to get it out of there. Be confident in who you are and secure that you're going to get it done, and you will. You have to believe in yourself. Like, the belief in yourself is critical. I think that sometimes I say, I can say it now after 20 years. I graduated law school 20 years ago yesterday. And I can say with all assurance now that I would bet on myself any day of the week and twice on Sunday. But I couldn't have said that 20 years ago. I don't even know if I could have said that 5 years ago. But now I feel very confident in that. Like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. I'm a great lawyer and I love being a lawyer. And that, I think, gets conveyed to the clients. And that is really the service. That's how you're empowered to help people. So to me, that's what you have to have.
Yeah, I love that. And so, on a related note, can you talk a little bit about your journey into big law? You and I were talking about this before. You had to balance very demanding hours in big law. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and
Yeah.
how you balance that with a young family in dealing with all of the challenges of motherhood, especially being a new mother with a
Mhm.
newborn, and what that journey was like.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you are correct. I started my legal journey in big law. I graduated at the very top of my class from Pepperdine, and I started out at Kirkland and Ellis in their bankruptcy group. And I was a law student during 9/11. And after September 11th, the corporate jobs, for whatever reason, it wasn't an economic downturn per se, but corporate transactional type jobs were very, very hard to come by. So even though I was third in my class in law school and had excellent grades, when I was applying for jobs, there was just so few in the corporate sphere. So when I spoke to my counselor was like, hey, bankruptcy is a nice blend. There's litigation, there's also transactional. It'll give you a little bit of both to at least get your foot in the door, and then you'll figure it out. And Kirkland had a wonderful bankruptcy group, still some of my most cherished friends and colleagues from my legal career ever. We were from that firm in the bankruptcy group. And I went into bankruptcy and I didn't necessarily love it. I was doing a lot of litigation and I'm just not meant to be a litigator. I wanted to draft contracts. So after about 3 years, I started looking for a job and I ended up switching from bankruptcy, which was considered a litigation spot, to Sidley Austin. And I went into a real estate transactional spot. And I loved the transactional aspect of that. And I learned so much at Sidley, but Sidley was a little bit more of a FaceTime firm at that time. I don't know if it is still to this day, but at that time it was a little bit more of a FaceTime firm. And I'd had my first child at Kirkland, but my second child I had at Sidley. And in 2008, he was born. So if you recall, in 2007, the economic situation with real estate started to tank. And by 2008 and into 2009, things were really, really bad. And there was layoffs at that time. I did not get laid off. However, because of the layoff process and because the hours were so amiss during that period, because of real estate, as I mentioned, I was in the real estate group. Real estate was just in crazy crisis land. It was workout central. I worked on some very large multi-tranche lending that was all having to be reworked because of the economic situation. It was really crazy. But I had two kids at that point. I had a around 3 years old, and then a newborn when I first went back in 2009. And the layoffs happened about a month after I got back. So I was scared. I had that like sort of terror, and I started to wonder like what would have happened to my family if I got laid off, or if the economic crisis got worse and worse and worse. And so those thoughts were in the back of my head. At that same time, our hours were just really amiss. Like I said, real estate was in crazy, like we'd have to sit in our chairs, like just in case clients called, but sometimes they wouldn't call till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then on a day you literally build nothing from 8 to 3, at 3 o'clock, all of a sudden you would have 9 hours of work. And because there was no other work, you were obviously expected to do it, which now that I run a law practice, 100% I understand this from a financial perspective. But for me, if I got home at 1 a.m., I had a baby that was waking up at 5 a.m. no matter what time I got home. And it just became so complicated. And by the end of September, so I went back in February of 2009. By the end of September of 2009, I was just completely burnt out. I had an 11-month-old baby. My hours were so crazy. I had worked for 30 days on a project that was like an all day, kind of all night project. And again, I lived an hour away. I had this horrible drive. And by the time I finally like breathed after that 30-day period, I was just completely done. I thought I was done being a lawyer. I actually thought I hated the law. And I had decided I was going to leave the law and go become a pediatrician. This is what my brilliant strategy was. And I went to my ex-husband that night and I told him, I'm like, I'm miserable. I can't keep doing this. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I'm going to go be a pediatrician. And he's like, no, you're not. We're still paying for law school. No, you're not. And I was like, okay. So I decided to give my notice, and I decided I was going to try my hand at just being a stay-at-home mom for a little bit while I figured out where my next path was going to go. And I did that for a few months with my son and daughter, and very quickly realized that while I have the utmost respect for stay-at-home moms, because it is actually the hardest job on the planet, it wasn't for me. And so I ultimately decided to form my own law practice. I was like, I'm 6 years out of law school. I feel like I have a lot of really great experience. I'm going to try my hand at this. So I went to my mom and I said, would you like to start a business together? She was already a sole practitioner. She'd almost her whole career been a sole practitioner. She'd worked for a firm for maybe a few years in the beginning, but other than that, had always been a sole practitioner. I went to her, I said, I think we should do this together. And she said, what if it ruins our relationship? And I said, it won't. And I believe if we build it, they will come. And I was right. And my mom and I had a great run. Our firm was called McDowell Odom. And we did that from we started in 2009, but it was official in 2010. And then 2010 to 2016. And then a larger firm acquired us. We were their biggest competitors at the time, and we worked with them for 5.5 years. And then ultimately, unfortunately, equity ownership, was not forthcoming. And I missed being a business owner. I missed that entrepreneurial hat. I missed having some semblance of control and being able to, in transactional, there's a lot of times where you have billing issues because remember, you're doing more proactive work than defensive work. And there's budgets in there. And I felt like it was just so complicated to have to request for, approval for discounting a bill because it went a little higher than you anticipated. And I just missed being a business owner. And So after I recognized that I wasn't going to get that equity card at that firm, no matter what I did there, I mean, I definitely had a quite impressive book of business. I decided that it was time for me to go out on my own, and I've never regretted it. I formed Odom Law Group in 2022, and wow, has it been amazing. 2.5 years almost, and it has been a wild, amazing ride. We started with 5 employees total, including myself. I think we're at 14 now. It's just amazing. It's a, knock on wood, really well-oiled machine, and we have a lot of fun here together. And it's all transactional. We don't do litigation here. It's just been a really, we do some probate and trust litigation stuff, but for the most part, we're out of litigation. And it's just been a really wonderful thing, and it's fun to be able to make my own choices, and I don't have to consult with anyone, and I love it.
That's great. That's amazing. So how has it been for you as a minority female in a primarily white male dominated industry? How have you found that in terms of complexities, challenges, and how have you navigated those?
So I definitely, and again, with all due respect to my old firm, because I harbor no, resentment or anything else there. I think that it was all the owners of the firm were men. And I think it is hard to sometimes cross that barrier of, what, women are a little more emotional naturally. I try to be very in charge of that, but we can't help it. Sometimes things hurt our feelings. Um, Sometimes we might be a little more quick to react about things. And so I don't know if that was the reason that I never had the opportunity to become an equity owner or whatever, but I never, in terms of my own practice, I developed a great practice. I have a great book of business. I have some really fantastic high-end clients in the form of, big companies. So I had achieved all of that, but for whatever reason, getting the sort of recognition within the entrepreneurial aspect of the business wasn't going to happen, and I don't know why. And the reality is, the only way that I could really see to do it was to say, I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to do it myself. And turns out that was the right bet. It's been amazing. And I've never for 1 second felt like I made the wrong decision. I think that women in our industry have a few things that are challenging. Number one, especially if whether you're a mom or not, but if you're a wife or have any sort of traditional female roles, you're expected to do those roles and do them well, regardless of the fact that you're also expected to be a fabulous lawyer and be stylish and put together and in shape. And there's just so many pulls on women these days. And I think that is one thing that your law students or your junior lawyers, when they're female and they go into this practice, I think that's one of the tough things that we have to navigate. I remember one time my fiance forced me to bring my son. I have a new husband now, but he was my fiance at the time, and my son was causing us a lot of strife, and he was really mad, and he's like, Colin is going to work with you for the day. And I was like, excuse me? I'm like, I can't bring him to work. And he was absolutely insistent that he had the day off from school. So he was absolutely insistent that he wasn't staying at the house because he'd been too naughty. And I remember feeling just this deep, deep sense of overwhelm that I had my child in the office with me because he was being punished. I felt like I was being punished. But in reality, my son and I laugh about that day because we both learned a lot that day about communication, and he's never had to do that again. But kind of the difficulties of being and I was a single mom at the time, obviously. So when my fiance is like, he's not staying here all day, I'm not going to be responsible for him, and he was over the age of daycare, what were my options? Like, these are the real things that women in a profession have to deal with sometimes. And I've had to navigate it for so many years that it's just become sort of part and parcel to my life. But there are days when the school calls and they're like, so and so is sick or so and so has a fever, and I'm like, does he not have a dad? Does she not have a dad? Like, why is it that you expect me to do it? I'm the one that actually works 80 hours a week. Like, what's happening here? But alas, here I am picking up the call and dealing with it. So I think that there are a lot of pings on women in the profession. And I think that's why so many struggle to make it to the higher levels of partnership and ownership, because it's just so daunting and overwhelming. That's my feeling.
Yeah. And how does one overcome that? How does one deal with that?
It's a work in progress every day. I would say you have days that are better than others. I think you have to build your support group. You know how they say it takes a village to raise a family or a child? It really does. You have to have the right people in place. One thing that I've loved owning my own business is I don't feel any kind of way about asking my assistant to run errands for me, including the errand of picking up my child. So if my children needed something and I wasn't able to deal with it, I would say, to Chelsea, can you please run and go grab Colin or do this? And that's helped me a lot. So having a support system, including in my family too, it's a lot of shuffling. I live by my calendar in a way that I never had before I had children. That calendar tells me to be here at 1 p.m. I'm there at 1 p.m. And the other interesting thing that I had to do, and this is more recent, but I felt like when I was trying to volunteer for everything and build my business and network, I felt like my kids suffered a lot during that period. I had a lot of night events and things like that. And then when they became teenagers, it became abundantly clear that those night events weren't going to work, because you need combat pay to raise teenagers and they need constant support from their parents. And so as a result of that, I started putting serious boundaries about what I could do and when. So I'm a divorced mother, so I have my kids every other week. So for me, I would immediately, like, on weeks I have my children, my end time is 5:30. It doesn't matter if I'm done with work. It doesn't matter what is going on. I am ending my day at 5:30 and making time for them for dinner. Now, if I have to go back to work, great. It sucks. And we all do it. All of us lawyers do. But I only do it when I absolutely have to. I really try to give them that time and that attention. And I think that what it comes down to is learning how to be present with your children and your family on the times when you're there. I think that a lot of times us moms start to feel that we're not doing enough for our kids because we can't do what a lot of our fellow moms can when they don't have jobs as insane as ours or they don't work. But I think what it really comes down to is the quality of the time that you spend with your children. And so I have absolutely, over the last few years of I've been raising my teenagers, have just been super regimented. This is a week I have the kids. I'm leaving at 5:30. We are having dinner at 6:30. We're going to hang out and talk about school and do all those things. And I feel like my kids are the best adjusted that they've been in years and years and years. So you can get there. You just have to find what works for you and your family. And I would say the only other thing I could say to people who are struggling with that balance, and I think, by the way, it applies to both men and women. It's not just a female thing, but I think you have to figure out what works for you and your family, and you have to drown out the noise of all the people who are like, I made this on Pinterest for Johnny for his science project, or you have to drown that out. Raising kids is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You got to find the right balance for you and your family. And I would say that's just generally the thing about lawyering. You have to find what works for you. It doesn't work for I can work 80 hours a week and not ever get tired of being a lawyer. I love being a lawyer. I will complain about the 80 hours, but I still get excited to go to work on Monday. Not everybody is like that, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad lawyer. Some people are workaholics. Some people want to work more of a 9-to-5. Like, you got to find the right fit for you, and that will make your career last, in my opinion.
100% agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to create your own guidelines, your own code for yourself, and abide by it and live by it.
I think so.
What is the one best piece of advice that you've received that you can pass on to the listeners?
That's a big one. I would say for me, the best advice I can give is to really focus on yourself. Figure out what works for you and what is going to, find what gives you outlets in your career, what gives you space to think, whether it's a sauna session or meditating or yoga or whatever, but have outlets. It isn't healthy. Like for all of us workaholics, which I'm guessing you have lots of listeners that are, and I am also one, so I'm in you're in good company. Find outlets, because the outlets give you space to think and space to figure out what you want to do, especially if you're thinking about going into your own practice. When you take on the ownership of a business in addition to working the business, because that's the unique thing about being a lawyer, you have to actually service the business and manage it. And that's a lot of work. And so you got to be able to know when it's time to be a lawyer and service your clients, and when it's time to be a leader and service your team. And if you don't take the space to figure out what that looks like, you're not going to be an effective leader, and you're also not going to be an effective lawyer, and probably not effective in your family either. So you gotta have outlets. It is not healthy to just work 80 hours a week and never have a break. It's just not. Oh, and take vacations. Always take vacations. You got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Self-care, I think, is so overlooked. Unfortunately, they don't teach that in law school. They don't teach the importance of that, or at least when I graduated back in 2011, they certainly weren't teaching it. And I don't think that's really changed over the decades. So Lisa, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn a little bit more about you, your practice? What's your website? Any social media handles you've got?
Yeah. So our website is www.odomlawgroup.com. And then we have a Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I might have a TikTok, but I've never used it. So I feel like that one might not be the right one to go to, but definitely Instagram and Facebook. We definitely have Odom Law Group. I think that's the handle, is Odom Law Group. And then LinkedIn as well. And also certainly anybody who ever wants to talk to me about any of these issues can find me individually on LinkedIn. It's under Lisa Odom. So yeah, I would love to connect to anybody who ever wants to chat about any of these fun topics of being a lawyer and an entrepreneur at the same time.
That's great. Appreciate that, Lisa. And thank you so much for being on today. And to all the listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time on the From Crisis to Justice podcast, we'll see you next time.